For 10 years, the greatest army the world had ever seen waged war on one city and could not take it. Troy's walls were too high, its towers too strong. Thousands died on that beach, and the gates never once opened. Then, in a single night, Troy fell. Not to an army, to a gift. This is the story of the most famous trick in history, and the strange truth buried underneath it. Troy stood on the coast of what is now Turkey, guarding the gateway between two seas. Its walls rose 30 feet high, sloped so no ladder could hold and no ram could crack them. For 9 long years, the Greeks had besieged it, and still the city held. Boys had grown into soldiers and died beneath those walls, and the men still fighting had forgotten the sound of home. They had come for one woman, Helen, a queen carried off to Troy, and the kings who had sworn to bring her home. But all that blood had won them nothing. The Greeks were starving, sick, and desperate to go home. Even Achilles, the deadliest fighter Greece had, was already dead, brought down by an arrow to the heel. The war was lost. Everyone could feel it. Everyone except one man. Odysseus was not the strongest soldier on that beach. He was the cleverest. If the walls could not be broken, he reasoned, then the Trojans would have to open them. He summoned Epeius, the finest carpenter in the army. Together, they began to build something monstrous out of fir and rough-cut beams. A horse, taller than the walls, hollow as a tomb. Into its belly climbed the bravest warriors Greece had left. It was a desperate gamble. If the Trojans simply burned the horse, the last heroes of Greece would die, screaming inside it. Then the rest of the army did something that made no sense at all. They burned their camp, boarded their ships, and sailed away. When Troy woke at dawn, the Greek camp made no sound at all. The smoke was gone. The tents were ash. The sea was empty. After 10 years of war, the Greeks had simply vanished. And there, alone on the sand, stood the great wooden horse. The gates of Troy creaked open, and for the first time in a decade, the people walked free on their own shore. They circled the horse, laughing, weeping, reaching out to touch it. They had no idea it was full of men. But the Greeks had left one thing behind on purpose. A man. His name was Sinon, and he let himself be dragged before the Trojan king in chains. He wept. He swore the Greeks had abandoned him to be sacrificed. His voice shook. His tears looked real. Every single word was rehearsed. The horse, he said, was an offering to the goddess Athena. They had built it too large to fit through Troy's gates on purpose. For if Troy ever brought it inside, the city would become impossible to conquer. It was a perfect lie, because it told the Trojans exactly what they wanted to hear. Not everyone believed him. A priest named Laocoon pushed through the crowd. "A gift," he shouted, "from the army that came to destroy us? I fear the Greeks most of all when they pretend to give. Burn it where it stands," he begged them. "Trust nothing the Greeks leave behind." He hurled his spear into the horse's flank, and from inside came a hollow groan. For a moment, the whole city went still. Then the sea began to move. 2 enormous serpents rose from the waves and coiled around the priest and his sons. They crushed them in front of the entire city, then slid back beneath the water. The Trojans read it as a sign. The gods had punished the man who doubted. The horse was holy. The loudest voice of warning was gone. So Troy tore down part of its own sacred wall to bring the horse inside. A princess named Cassandra screamed that the city was doomed. But Cassandra was cursed to always speak the truth and never be believed. They wheeled the horse through the breach to the very heart of the city, and then Troy did what it had dreamed of for 10 years. It celebrated. Wine flowed, songs rose. The war was over, and they had won. By midnight, the city that no army could conquer lay fast asleep. In the darkness, a single hatch opened in the horse's belly. One by one, the warriors lowered themselves on a rope into the sleeping city. Sinon slipped to the walls and lit a signal fire. It was the sign the fleet had been waiting for. Out at sea, hidden behind a nearby island, the Greek fleet had never truly left. They had only sailed beyond the horizon, and now they were rowing back in the dark. The men from the horse cut down the guards and threw open the gates. The entire Greek army poured into Troy while it slept. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. Fire raced through the streets the defenders had protected for 10 years. Mothers hid their children in the temples, and the temples did not save them. King Priam was cut down at his own altar. By dawn, the city that had stood for centuries was gone. The walls still stood, but there was no one left inside to guard them. 10 years of war had been undone in a single night by a trick. For thousands of years, people assumed it was all a fairy tale. Then, in the 1870s, a businessman named Heinrich Schliemann began digging into a hill in Turkey called Hisarlik. He found a city, and beneath it, another, and another. 9 of them stacked across the centuries. One of those layers had burned. Its houses were shattered, its streets scattered with arrowheads and unburied bones. It had been destroyed by war around 1200 BC, exactly when legend said Troy fell. The wooden horse may never have existed. Some think it was a battering ram, others an earthquake the Greeks blamed on the gods. But the city was real. The war was real, and the ruins still stand on that Turkish hill today, where you can still walk through the gates of Troy yourself. We will never know how much really happened, and how much grew in the telling. But that is the strange magic of the oldest stories. The line between history and legend is thinner than anyone thinks. There are hundreds more like this, the real history buried inside the myths we only think we know. Subscribe, and I'll tell you the next one.